This is the Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast with Nick Cattles.
You are listening to the Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast with Nick Cattles, part of the CLNS Media Network. Greg, you just witnessed OTA Practice the second time in the last 2 weeks. We'll get to what you saw, some of your takeaways, but I first want to ask you about Mike Vrabel's press conference leading into the practice. He was asked about this Stefon Diggs video. For people that are unaware of this video, Stefon Diggs looks like he's on a yacht. He is surrounded by very lovely women clad up in bikinis. If I could spit it out, they're all wearing bikinis and they're all enjoying the sun. And at one point, Diggs has something in his hand, and he ends up opening that something up. And he takes trying to describe this perfectly so people can get a true vision of it and not try to infer things. It's a long baggie, like it's a plastic baggie. I want to say probably 2 to 3 inches in length, and it has a pink substance in it. And he hands it to one of the women he's talking with. And this quickly became an issue on social media. People speculating that it could be a pink, quote-unquote, substance. Vrabel was asked about that today, Greg. What did you make of Vrabel's answer about the video, and if you have thoughts yourself on that video?
So as far as Vrabel goes, I thought he was annoyed. He was annoyed to be having to answer these types of questions. This is a guy who's a veteran NFL player, one of the guys that you expect to be a leader on your team. I mean, he said something along the lines of, we're hoping that with our time here on the field today, blah, 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 that we're making great decisions. The message will be the same for all our players, that we're trying to make great decisions. And basically what he's saying is Stefon Diggs did not make a great decision. And it's an unnecessary distraction when they're trying to build this thing. That being said, and I totally agree with Mike on that. That being said, this whole hullabaloo about Stefon Diggs and whatever it is, I mean, first of all, what people have to remember is the NFL has changed dramatically how they handle street drugs. And that goes for all street drugs. Like it used to be like, whether it was guys getting popped for marijuana or cocaine or whatever, that doesn't happen anymore. It doesn't happen in the new CBA. I mean, look at Jabrill Peppers. He got caught by cops, mind you, with cocaine. And that's going to go away. We haven't heard from the NFL. Who knows whether we're going to hear from the NFL. We have no idea what that substance is, Stefon Diggs. And I'm not here to absolve him and, defend him. But it's a video. We have no idea what's going on there. The NFL certainly isn't going to suspend anybody for some sort of video. The bigger thing is like, to even get suspended for street drugs in the NFL, like you have to test positive, like 3 times. Like if you're not in the program already, the rehabilitation program, then there's no punitive damages really for the player. I mean, when was the last time you heard about a player being suspended for street drugs? So to me, this is one of these typical NFL offseason, not much going on. The Patriots haven't practiced in a week. They got sick of talking about Drake Maye's interceptions, and it's much ado about nothing. It's completely overblown.
All right. With all that said, was Diggs on the field today that you saw?
Nope.
Because, all right, I was going to say Vrabel made it sound like he was not going to be there. Do you have any thoughts as to why Stefon Diggs would not be there? Do you think it has to do with the video? Do you think it could be we want to keep this guy away from the media? Because last week there was a picture that surfaced, a video that surfaced, whatever, from the Patriots themselves where Diggs was wearing a helmet and he was participating in OTAs. So why is he not there today?
Yeah, look. It's voluntary. I'm trying to remember back to last week if he was I don't even know if he was here for the media practice that was open. Now, the Patriots did post stuff from like Thursday's OTA that showed him catching a pass, and I don't know about the video. I must have missed that. But Look, this is voluntary. Maybe he wasn't going to be here all along. I don't think, guys missing stuff this time of year, especially a guy coming off a torn ACL. I don't really care all that much, and I'm not sure the Patriots do either.
Another guy that's not there is Terrell Williams still, the defensive coordinator. Vrabel didn't really add too much to what he said prior about Williams, but he's still absent. Is training camp, Greg, you think the goal here to see if Williams is back by then? And until he's not there at training camp, it is what it is, and they'll deal with what they've got to deal with?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's the right read on it. I think he's obviously going through a serious health situation. It seems to be some sort of process that he has to go through to get back. That's going to take some time. Hopefully he is back for training camp, but that's the good thing about having a veteran staff with a head coach that comes from a defensive background, is that they certainly have a lot of backup. I mean, I think most of us even, certainly impressed with what Terrell Williams has done over his career. The players that played under him talk glowingly about him, but I think we were all sort of already saying, this is going to be Vrabel's defense. It's going to have his signature on it. And I don't think that changes. I don't think Terrell Williams, if this goes into training camp or what have you, is a huge issue given the staff and Mike Vrabel, but I guess we'll have to see how it goes.
All right, let's get to this OTA practice. Let's start just with big picture before we get into offense, defense. I want Greg Bedard's biggest takeaway from today's OTA practice.
My biggest takeaway. Well, I will say the offense was a little bit better today. The only turnover that Drake Maye had today was a fumbled snap. Was
Antonio Mafe back? Was Antonio Mafe back at center today?
No.
Last
it was,
year,
yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say last year we had about 30 fumbled snaps and bad snaps between Mafe and Drake Maye. So I'm guessing it's Garrett Bradbury.
Yeah, it was Bradbury. It looked to me that Drake pulled out a little bit early. Yeah, that came out wrong, but whatever.
Say, better early than late, Drake.
Exactly. Yeah, the only other turnover was the pastronaut had a nice pass to the big moose, number 83. John Giles.
Oh, John
Giles tried to catch it with his body. It bounced off his chest and went straight to a defensive back. So I guess my big takeaway is things were better offensively. They're making some progress. I wouldn't say it was great. I'm sure some of the storyline out of this will be, Drake Maye was kind of middling while Josh Dobbs, had the bigger plays and was making more plays. I mean, I don't really care. It's week 2 of OTAs. Drake is a very young player in a new offense. Dobbs has seen everything in this league. We know he's a rocket scientist and all that. So the big takeaway is the offense was a little bit better, including Drake Maye, and to me, that's progress.
All right, before we get more into Drake Maye and the specifics of what Greg saw, for those listening, we ask that you subscribe to the podcast, like and leave a review. For those watching the show on CLNS, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe to the Patriots Press Pass YouTube channel where you can find our show and a lot of other Patriots content here. Also, please make sure to turn on your notifications so you know the instant a new video drops. Also, don't forget, I always remind everybody, Greg and Mike Giardi doing great work over at BSJ, $50 for the year. John Corrales does excellent work. I mean, we're talking about all of this chaos for the Celtics offseason. John's all over it. Hags is trying to figure out who the next head coach is going to be for the Bruins. They might name that guy by July, hopefully. Who the hell knows? So check out all their work. $50 for the year at Boston Sports Journal. All right, I want to drill down on the Drake Maye thing a little bit more, Greg. The good, the bad, the indifferent that you saw from the sophomore quarterback today.
I would say that as far as Drake Maye went, it looked like he was processing a little bit better, a little quickly. He still has that hitch that seems to annoy only me, where he goes to pass and he's got to put out the ball, and it's just part of his process. We sort of learned that last year as he's going through things. I thought his decision making was pretty good. He did have a couple plays where there was one specifically where he threw incomplete to Kendrick Bourne, where Drake Maye sort of slid to his left, and then nothing was really down the field. And so he came back. He threw not only across his body and across the field to Kendrick Bourne. Luckily, it was sort of like a check down type of situation. So, but you just saw that, and it's one of those young quarterback plays where you're just like, all right, there's got to be a better option than that. I'm just looking through my notes. Sometimes there was one point where Kendrick Bourne, I thought he should have sat down. He didn't, so Drake threw behind him. There was a sack by Keon White. Looked like he got the best of Will Campbell on that. But, I thought it was, overall like a pretty middling day. Drake, as opposed to Dobbs, couldn't find anything really down the field. I will say, I thought that the first two periods, so basically there were 4 periods of passing, and I have Drake for 9 of 15 with a sack and a fumble. I have Dobbs 10 of 15 with an interception and a sack. I thought the first 2 periods were deceptive periods. They were all sort of quick game screens, stuff like that. So in the true team periods, to me, he was 4 of 7 with a sack and a fumble. Dobbs was 5 of 8 with a sack in the true team periods. But I thought it was fine. Nothing bad, nothing great. Sort of like a middling day. But again, from where we were last week with that first period where he threw 4 interceptions, he's making progress.
How much conversation is happening at these practices that you've been to so far? How much of the conversation is happening between McDaniels and Maye during the practice? Is it a lot, or is McDaniels just kind of letting him learn this and get a feel for it?
That's a good question. So I do want to note, and Vrabel said this in his press conference. He said that there was he said that when we don't have a script and we're on the call periods. So yeah. I thought that was the last 2 where they're basically like going unscripted, as opposed to, the week before when he threw 4 interceptions, it was scripted. It was a passing camp. So there's no threat of run or anything like that. I would say there's a decent amount of discussion going on. I will say, I think Thomas Brown is doing more of the talking with the quarterbacks. McDaniels, like during these periods, like even when Drake's off the field, Josh has plays to call, and he's on the headset. He's on the side. I would say between periods, Josh gets with all the quarterbacks. At one point, I think it was during a cool down period before the final jog through, Vrabel was talking with Maye a lot. I mean, nothing big one way or the other, just sort of, talking through things a little bit. So I think the communication has been really good.
One name you didn't mention, I got to ask you about him. How about the quarterback's coach, Ashton Grant? Is he MIA in a lot of these conversations? Is it mostly Brown, McDaniels, and Vrabel?
I would say that's true. Now, again, I don't know these guys real well, like who's who, between plays, quickly looking over. So it could be Ashton Brown. I see Ashton Brown more of, if I think I have the right person, I see him more with a clipboard, sort of writing things down as things are going on, where Thomas Brown is sort of like the assistant, offensive coordinator with McDaniels, that he's a little bit more involved directly with Drake Maye from series to series.
All right, let's jump to some offensive positions here. We start with up front, offensive line. Good day, bad day. How do you feel?
I would say it was okay. I mean, I do think that there were some free rushers at times. I will say that I'm very impressed with the Patriots defense on it's nothing that we haven't seen before around here. But the amount of movement, like synchronized movement by the defensive line to go one way, and then you got linebackers wrapping the other way. I would say it's more than in the past. I think it's a staple of a Mike Vrabel defense. So it's a lot to deal with. I would say, you got the linebackers coming from depth, a couple free runners. But I thought it was better today. Morgan Moses was more in the mix today as far as taking part. Owenu did not. Jared Wilson did not, as far as true team periods. So it seems like Moses is getting back to the mix. I will say, and I don't want to reveal any depth chart stuff because I might get tasered or anything like that. But I will say probably the most interesting player on the offensive line today was Tyrese Robinson. Not somebody who's been talked a lot about as far as the guard competition, but let's just say he got a lot of run today and a lot of looks. And I have heard his name increasingly more. We all know that pretty much the Red Sox, pretty much the Patriots are set all over the offensive line. We know who's going to be where. We know who's returning. We know who they drafted in the first round. We know the free agents that they signed. But I think we can all say, as adults, that left guard is an open competition. And I think that, last week we saw a lot of Wes Schweitzer. I would say this week was Tyreek Robinson's day. Who knows next week? It could be Cole Strange. It could be, it could be City So. Could be Layden Robinson. I would say that it's safe to say that competition is ongoing and probably going to be a while.
Did everybody else seem healthy? Was everybody else out there that could participate at left guard? Or were they thinner today, and maybe that's why Robinson got more looks? Or do you think he's,
Well, I will say this. From talking to people, I definitely think that Jared Wilson is going to be involved in the left guard competition. I mean, he will get looks at center as well. We know where he played in college. We know what Vrabel has said about him at the time of drafting him, about him as a center. He also played guard at Georgia before that. But I do, Wilson not being out there, I think gives us an incomplete picture of exactly what's going on. I will say, Nick, from my conversations with people, I think that Layden Robinson, possibly Cole Strange, those guys are facing uphill battles, and they need to get moving pretty quickly.
Interesting, because Cole Strange was seen as the guy that was, in the top unit last week at left guard. So maybe he's starting to fall back in this race. Got to ask you about Will Campbell. I'm sure people are screaming, what about Will Campbell? You said he was beat by Keon White for one play, but just kind of the balance of his day today.
Yeah, I thought it was similar to last week, Nick, where, I thought he had a couple of tough plays. I definitely noted the Keon White thing, trying to keep an eye on everything that's going on. I will say he probably had a couple of tough plays that he wants back. But overall, I would say this was a better practice for him.
All right, so that's good to hear. Let's jump to the wide receivers. I'll first ask you, any wide receiver stand out to you today?
Well, I will say Kyle Williams had a big play down the field, probably the play of the day, deep from Josh Dobbs. What I really liked, he beat number 35, that is Miles Battle. And deep down the field, what I liked about it is Kyle Williams, not only, his speed down the field, which I still think he has another gear to get to. What I really like is that he stacked the cornerback, which means he got on top of them and then moved in front of them. So, and then Dobbs threw it outside towards the sideline, and Williams made sort of like an over-the-shoulder catch. I will say that there was another. Javon Baker had a big play, possibly for a touchdown. However, he completely shoved Marcellus Dial. Like, they were sort of engaged, and right at the end, Javon Baker shoved him with one arm to get him on. I mean, it definitely would have been a flag in the game. That didn't stop Baker from running for a touchdown, flexing towards the defensive sideline while the offensive huddle was waiting for him to get back, which I don't think Mike Vrabel was all that pleased about. Jaheim Bell made a great catch from Josh Dobbs. And I will say Efton Chisholm, again, especially like later in practice, had a couple of really nice plays. There was one, where is it? I can't find it. But I really like how he showed a lot of maturity and why I think he's going to make this team ultimately. He came all the way back for the ball. He didn't wait for the ball. He came all the way back to help his quarterback. And then as we're accustomed to seeing with him, after he got the ball in his hand, he made a great jump stop and somebody went by. Like Chisholm's been pretty impressive. And, I think they're going to have a hard time keeping him off this team.
I didn't hear anything about Jalen Polk. Is he continuing to be MIA? Is he doing anything?
Yeah, he's still on the side doing his own thing. I will say Booty's still getting a lot of run. Booty, Bourne, Demario Douglas, and then Kyle Williams, and then it sort of filters down from there as far as snaps. But yeah, Baker hasn't really done anything yet.
Not looking great so far for Baker and Polk's hopes. not looking great so far. I got to ask you about TreVeyon Henderson because, of course, he's the other sexy rookie name that everybody wants to know about. Him, along with the group, Ramondre, heard that he was back.
Yep.
So just the running back starting with Henderson.
It seemed like Antonio Gibson got a lot of run. He was the de facto starter. Stevenson was there. We saw him in jog-throughs towards the end, taking part, jog-throughs at the beginning and end of practice. Henderson certainly got his chances. I would say he didn't really stand out all that much today. I mean, he didn't have any. I know that him and Maye didn't connect on a sort of swing pass to the left at one point. But, even in you see the explosiveness. I mean, I just love his build. I love his balance. During the jog through, he took a draw and then he ran 60 yards down the field, even though there's no defense on the field. And you just see the explosiveness. But a couple of times he got the ball in the flat, and you see him get up to speed quickly. A lot to like there.
All right, let's jump to the defensive side. Unless you have any other offensive notes.
No, I don't think so. I will say, one thing I wanted to note, and this is very minor. Jack Connolly, the kid from BC.
Yeah.
He's listed. I gotta be careful about this stuff. He's listed as a guard on the roster. I will say they were using his versatility today. Let's see if that buzzword can get underneath the sensor.
All right, let's get to the defensive side now. Let's start with the defensive line. We started with the offensive line. Let's start with the defensive line. I have high expectations for this defensive line. I think a lot of people have high expectations for this defensive line, Greg. It's really early, but what's your early read on this D line?
My early read is, I really like it. I will say I was looking at Christian Barmore through my binoculars today. I continue to be impressed, just like the way he looks. To me, it's by far the best shape that he's ever been in, with the Patriots. So that's great. Milton Williams doing his thing. I think he batted down a pass. I will say Joshua Farmer, I would say, got increased playing time today. He definitely broke up a pass. Maybe I'm wrong about Milton Williams. Maybe that was Farmer. Having Harold Landry out there, and Keon White looks extremely comfortable. What they're asking him to do, which I would say is using more of his athletic ability than we have seen in the past. He's not going to be a hand in the dirt type of guy. He's going to be like F some shit up type of thing on off the edge, chase on, getting some run. I think it's impressive what the defensive line is doing, and then sort of the linebackers working off of that. It just seems very comfortable for a lot of these guys very early on.
Yeah, about Barmore, if you go back, and I noticed this last week or the week before, if you go back and you look at him from last year, you could tell he was not in the best of shape for obvious reasons. We all know what was going on. And if you see like some, early photos of him at camp, it certainly looks like, as you said, Greg, he's in tremendous shape, which is great news for everybody. Second level, Jahlani Tavai, is he still out there off the ball? What, is he still in this mix, or how do you see that shaking out on the second level so far?
Yeah, I will say he did not take part in team today.
Okay.
He was one of those guys that left after the early period jog through, so it was hard to tell. Of course, you got Spillane. Christian Ellis gets a lot of run. I will say, I don't want to step on any toes because Marte Mapu is listed as a safety on the roster. Let's just say they continue to use his versatility in a role that we've seen him play with the Patriots before. I will say, I do want to say, not to jump levels, but, Jabrill Peppers was out there and, on the field and getting a lot of run at his customary safety position. No Kyle Duggar, so it's hard to really see what they're doing. I did want to note Craig Woodson, the draft pick, sort of somewhat controversial draft pick. I watched him a couple times today pretty closely. I really, really like his instincts. I think he was going up against Dobbs at one point, and he was playing sort of middle of the field, and I think it was a tight end was coming across the field, and he completely read the play and broke it up. Almost had like a near interception type of thing. So, Woodson's a guy that continues to pop for me when he's out there.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. Vrabel was asked about the safety position and the rotation before the practice. He mentioned, as you just mentioned, Duggar is not on the field. He said he's working through something not uncommon in the spring. But then he got to Peppers, and we've talked about Peppers. And the first thought was like Peppers comes across as a Vrabel guy, a Terrell Williams guy, violent, physical, energy. And it's funny because that's exactly what Vrabel said. He said he loves Jabrill's energy, likes his passion for the game. I could easily see Peppers and Vrabel getting on the same page and respecting each other. At this point, I'd say I would be very surprised. I know Peppers was one of the names that were thrown out there as possible cuts. I think he's going to make this team. I think he's going to play a decent amount of football because I think they love that type of player, and they absolutely love that type of mentality.
Yeah, I agree with you. We've talked about it before, but, sort of like the holdovers who are still here and not cast off. I mean, I would say, Tavai and Peppers are probably two of the biggest that we've had question marks about, like, are these guys going to be a long-term fit? I still feel the same way about Tavai, especially if he's playing off the ball with, all they've brought in and all they have. But yeah, I would agree. I would say Vrabel's words today and also the way they used him today in practice is probably pretty good for his future.
Cornerbacks, anything of note?
Yeah, I will say probably, the top guys, we know all about them. I will say Alex Austin, continues to get a lot of run. Marcus Jones looks like he has a role on this team. But, do they like the longer sort of athlete, the taller guy? And I think we've heard Isaiah Bolden's name mentioned that, he could get some slot reps and things like that. But I will say, Austin being somewhat of a big factor today, not really surprising to me, but definitely noted it.
I'm glad you mentioned that because I think it was last week on the Locked On Patriots podcast that I do. I mentioned three guys that I think we're not talking enough about and could impact this season. And Austin was my top guy out of those three guys. when he's been on the field, Greg, he's been good. He's shown flashes that he can be a legitimate outside corner. Now you've got Carlton Davis. Austin seems like a guy you can move around a little bit, 6'1", 191. Davis misses a month of football every season. He averages under 13 games a year. So you just have to go into 2025 believing that third cornerback is going to be a big deal. And so I don't think we should be overlooking Alex Austin whatsoever. All right, let me just wrap it up here. Any other thoughts that you have that you want addressed before we say goodbye?
No, I think we've about covered everything today. And again, I caution people, and I know people have sports talk radio shows to do and all that, and especially with the Red Sox playing like ass and everybody else being done. But they're building something here, and I would not overreact to anything in the month of May. Let's see what happens once we get to August.
He's Greg. I'm Nick. We'll talk to you later in the week. Until then, be well.